All right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of the 49ers post-game pod. My name is Ben Retz. I will be your host today, and I am excited to bring you a victory pod. This is a good bounce back game. I'll be honest, last week I didn't get to do a post-game series, and apologies for that. I was going through something personal to me, but that's over in the past now. And that last week's that game was rough. It was a really rough game. I'll start by kind of, I guess, going back and backtrack into that and just highlighting a couple things. The lack of concentration from the 49ers last week against the Rams was very concerning. This was a game that the 49ers had in full control for essentially 58 minutes, and then right at the end, just it came down to a few errors. And, you're banking on a long field goal for Jake Moody, who doesn't knock it down. And look, I mean, I can't be too mad that he missed that field goal. It's a long one. But at the same time, it's like you're paid to kick the ball through the uprights. And that, didn't get done. Then next series, you rely on a guy who's limited in the amount of reps he sees in his career so far in Ronnie Bell to make a play that, honestly, if you're in the NFL, whatever you play, you should be able to make that catch. And unfortunately, he didn't make that catch, and that wasn't a first down. We were forced to punt, so it was just a lack of accountability and a lack of concentration down the stretch for the 49ers that ultimately cost them what should have been a win. That Rams team was in a much worse, dire situation considering their injuries. Their record was of concern. Like, they should have been 0-3 at that point, right? So anyway, let's fast forward a week. 49ers win today, 30-13. And there's a lot of positives to take out of this game. There are some negatives, and I'll talk about both of those here in a couple minutes. But let me start with some of the injuries sustained in this game. Obviously, going into the game, we were already kind of banged up. Still no CMC. And then, obviously, last week, we had Debo out. We had Kittle out. Kittle had a rib injury that he was dealing with. And so going into this, they were questionable. Well, they were back today, and that was great to see them back. Trent got sick earlier in the week and then had some issue, I think, with his ankle. However, he was good to go to start the game. So it was concerning leading up to it, but we got guys back. However, during the game, Jordan Elliott goes out with a knee injury, doesn't return. Fred Warner goes down with an ankle injury. He was listed as questionable, also does not return from the game, and that was at halftime when that happened. Kittle goes down with more rib issue. However, he comes back in and finishes the game. And Flanagan fouls at the end of the game, went down and obviously didn't come back in. So, the injuries just continue to stack up. And obviously last week we lost Hargrave, who was having a good game. And he's out for the season now. And then during practice on Thursday, Curtis Robinson, our backup linebacker, tore his ACL, and he's out for the season. So, I've been worried about this. Marcos and I have talked about this, potential of 2020 curse, repeating. We talk about history repeating itself, right? Well, the Niners are facing a lot of the same issues. They're coming off that Super Bowl loss. You're seeing all these injuries stacking up. You're seeing lacks of concentration, as a game wraps up. Like, there's eerily similar things going on this season as there were in 2020. So that's why today was a good win, because with all that said and done, the Niners are 2-2. And when I look at the rest of the leaderboards in the NFC West and the NFC just in total, like, the Niners are right there in the mix. And they haven't been at full strength at all this season at any point. So I can't be too mad. Honestly, they should be 3-1, but I digress. We're 2-2. That's okay. I'll take where we're at. So let me highlight a few of the things in this game that I thought was just phenomenal. Fred's pick six, ultimately, Marcos has his moments of the game segment. Well, I do have a moment of the game segment today, just today, though. It's not my segment or anything, but I'm just going to put a segment out there. Fred, that pick six was mandatory. It had to happen. And once again, he pulls a Madden play and picks off Brissett and runs it in for 6. And this was, at that point, it was 6-0. The 49ers just continued to push the ball down the field. However, they couldn't finish those drives. And so it was 6-0. The Pats had a chance to go down the field and get a touchdown, if they could have figured things out early. And then you're looking at, a situation where you're losing early on in the game. And we know how Kyle looks when he's losing a game. So that Fred Warner pick six couldn't have come at a better time. I was really thrilled to see that. The very next drive for the Patriots, we hold them to a 4th and 1, and Fred stuffs that play. Stops it. Turns the ball over. And it just every week it continues to amaze me how insanely good Fred Warner is at football. His confidence in himself, his knowledge of the game, everything is coming together for him now. Fred Warner has peaked. Actually, I can't even say that. Fred Warner's entered his prime, I'll tell you that, but has he peaked? Who knows? It doesn't seem like a guy like Fred can get much better, but I don't know. He could. But in this game, just awesome. Later on in the first half, the 49ers went down the field, and Purdy, who had a good game, I'll talk about him in a minute here, he had to score 3 touchdowns to count 1. And to kind of explain that, he threw 2 touchdowns that were overturned for penalties. And I'm just sitting back after that second penalty like, man, we just can't catch a break with these penalties. Like, they're coming at the worst times. We're just trying to get some points on the board offensively. Like, obviously at that point, we only have 1 touchdown, and it wasn't even our offense. That was Freddie. And so at this point, I'm like, I don't feel like we're going to punch the ball in at any point right now. Like, this is rough. Well, Brock gets his 3rd touchdown that only counts for 1 of them on the next play. And so, I got to hand it to Brock. He just continues to be the quarterback that I've said he's been. His ability to extend plays, his ability to read a defense, make something out of nothing. It's everything we need in him. He's playing like a top 3, top 5 quarterback in this league. And it's not just the system at this point. And if you're saying it's still just the system, you're not watching. Brock is playing really, really well. He's about to get a massive payday at the end of the season. So, got to hand it to Brock. He had a couple wayward passes in this game. Obviously, he threw an interception towards the end of the game. That was just a really good play by Jabril Peppers, who is one of the top players defensively in the league right now. He's been a top safety for years. So, once again, Jabril Peppers just continues to make his name known, makes a really good play on the ball, and turns that over. Aside from that, there was only really one more wayward pass that Purdy threw, and that was to Jauan Jennings on a slant route. But on the slant route, Jauan kind of got a little close to Brandon Aiyuk, and so he kind of pulled back on his route and kind of stopped a little bit. And Purdy expected him to keep going, and so it was right there. It could have easily been intercepted, and I can't remember the guy's name on the Patriots. He just couldn't catch the ball. So, a couple wayward passes, but ultimately, in this game, Brock played exactly how we needed him to. He ended with 288 yards, 15 of 27 from the field, 1 touchdown, and obviously that 1 interception. And as far as using his legs, rushing-wise, he only had 11 yards. He carried 5 times, right? So that's 5 times where he was being pressured and had to take off. But what doesn't make it on the stat sheet is how many times he rolled out of the pocket under pressure, created space for himself, and made a play off of it. There was a play in this game where he rolled out, beat like 3 pressures, and then pointed George Kittle towards the spot he wanted to throw the ball. George runs towards it and makes a great catch, setting it up for 1st and goal. It was semi-early in the game, but it was awesome. It's exactly what we need. You know what I mean? So, really good play from Brock. I can't be mad at him for that interception. That was honestly just a really good defensive play. But in this game, he had the two bombs to Deebo Samuel for 55, and then the other one to Jauan Jennings for, I don't know the exact yards for that play, but it was another massive bomb, and Jauan just makes an amazing play. And I just couldn't be more happy with the production I'm seeing out of Jauan Jennings. We're in week 4, and Jauan leads receiving yards for the Niners handily. It's not close. And in this game, he ends with 3 receptions for 88 yards, an average of 29 yards per catch. So shout out to Jauan Jennings for being the $120 million receiver that we're not paying you enough for. On that note, Brandon Aiyuk looked a little bit more like himself today, and that was a breath of fresh air. He made some catches that, he only had 2 receptions on the game, but the 2 that he had, one of them was a diving catch that looked very Brandon Aiyuk-esque, and then the other one was he cooked his coverage, found the open spot in the zone, and ran it. Like, that looked like Brandon Aiyuk today. So obviously, targets is concerned. I haven't done that breakdown yet. I know he was targeted around 5 or 6 times today, I think. And the other times, honestly, every team is throwing their best cornerback and safeties in his direction because he's the best route runner the Niners have. And he even talked about how he's seeing different coverages this year. So you can't blame the guy for, I guess, seeing the different coverages and kind of trying to feel out where he can still be effective. Obviously, he's going to be effective. And he's a little bit out of shape, right? But as he kind of figures out what defenses are throwing at him, he's going to be able to adjust to that. And ultimately, I think we'll be able to find him a little bit more often as the season progresses. But today was a breath of fresh air for me to see Brandon Aiyuk just play a little bit more like himself. So some of the positives, I'll just kind of wrap up here. The D-line looked really good today. I thought that they were able to wreak some havoc and put a lot of pressure on Jacoby Brissett. And obviously, look, the Patriots are the worst team offensively in the league right now. So, I can't look at this and be like, this is the 49ers, and truthfully be like, they're here to stay kind of thing. I need to see this more. But today was really good to see. It felt like a step in the right direction in terms of the pressure that we put on the quarterback. Brissett was forced to throw that ball and run out of the pocket many times. And obviously Brissett's not a very mobile QB. And so he took a lot of hits today. He was sacked 6 times. So shout out to the D-line for the 49ers for getting home on Brissett a few times. And honestly, the 49ers offense is so much cleaner, so much better when Deebo Samuel is out there. That documentary, the receiver documentary, if you haven't watched it, it's a phenomenal documentary on Netflix. I watched all of it. I think Marcos has watched the vast majority of it. George Kittle at one point talks about there was an instance last year, obviously we can recall when Deebo went out with that injury around week 5, I believe it was. And George is on the sideline when he finds out Deebo's out, and he's like, oh, that's not good. Like, Deebo's half of our playbook. And it's so evident to me that it's so clear when I watch the 49ers operate with Deebo versus not with Deebo. And today it felt more like the 49ers offense. It looked more like the 49ers offense. Even though Deebo didn't have a phenomenal game, like he finished with 3 catches for 58 yards and rushed it 2 times for 14. So he didn't have like a crazy game or anything, right? But he's that decoy that I talk about. And where it's like you always need to know where Deebo's at, because if Deebo's out in space, well, it's GG's. Like, he's going in. That's going to be a touchdown. So having him out there as just that presence on the field, huge. Nick Bosa was killer today. I think he played his best game of the season so far. He got home on Brissett a few times. I think only one of the sacks actually counted because Brissett just, he did that play where he'd throw the ball to the ground right as they're about to get sacked. And so probably at least 3 of those, what should have been sacks on Brissett, at least 2 of them were called back. So shout out to Nick Bosa, just everything that he's been for the 49ers, he showed today. He was that presence against that terrible offensive line that the Pats have going, and that's what you need to see. I mean, you got to take advantage of the weaknesses that other teams provide. And that was one of them. And the 49ers definitely executed extremely well in that regard. And obviously the defense in general looked a lot better. But again, this is the worst offense in the league. So I need to see more. Next week you have a dance with the Arizona Cardinals, who are looking a little more promising. I'm not biting on the hype just yet, but offensively, they're going to make more noise than this Patriots team would. So what does it look like next week, Nick Sorensen? And not just Nick Sorensen, I'll go to Brandon Staley, and this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to actually shift to my negatives. The secondary room for the 49ers has been awful this year. Letting up big plays, terrible coverages, miscommunications. Brandon Staley, who's in charge of that unit, it's been subpar. So I need to see some adjustments. And obviously, you've been dealing with Hufanga being out, and he came back last week, but then he rolled his ankle, and so he was out again today. And you start Malik Mustafa, which is his first, start in the NFL. But you see these guys, and it just seems like every play, like you have one or two good plays, and then you have a terrible play that you just let up a whole bunch of yards. And there was another one at the end of this game where it's like, that just can't happen. So I need to see better out of that secondary unit. And our special teams has been terrible. I mean, in this game, it wasn't so much of a factor, but that muffed kick return to start the second half that Aiyuk Rendo had, you can't have that because you turned it right back over to the Patriots when you were expecting to be starting with the ball in the second half. And you played the first half accordingly. And so, and on that note, it's interesting to see some of these errors happening, and especially in the last 2 weeks. We look at Ronnie Bell last week. We look at Isaac G this week. We look at Jacob Cowing earlier in the season with his muff pump. I actually kind of questioned the coaching at that point. Are these guys seeing enough reps? What is it? What is the reason that these guys aren't ready every single play? We've talked about that next man up mentality, and I see it in these guys. They're hungry, but physically they're not making the plays when they need to. So I need to see a little bit more out of the youngsters. And obviously, I mean, Kyle has favoritism. He will play the guys he's most comfortable with 9.5 times out of 10. But that half a time that he counts on you, if you don't make a play, you probably aren't seeing the field again for another week or two. And this has been multiple instances now where a young player has made a crucial or a big mistake in a game for the 49ers. So definitely concerning there. On that note, however, though, I'm going to go ahead and get into my game balls and wrap this up. So first game ball is going to go to Fred Warner, and I've given him a game ball already this season. He's probably going to get many more because that pick six was awesome. He set the tone defensively for the 49ers in the first half. Didn't play the second half, but you saw that tone continue on throughout the second half. And that's exactly what you need to see out of your linebacker, especially somebody in Fred he's a seasoned veteran at this point. He's a leader. He's the heart and soul of that defense. And I just can't stress enough how amazing of a football player he is. Second game ball is going to go to Jauan Jennings. Jauan had another really good game for us. And he's continued to show that he's just ready for his moment. Any moment you throw at him, Jauan's going to be ready. Making great catches, getting it open in space, giving Purdy a great, reliable option when he needs it. Can't stress enough how important he's been. And in this game, he was, once again, exactly as advertised. And speaking of advertised, Nick Bosa, just a great game from him. Obviously, his best one of the season. Need to see that keep going. So, ultimately today, it was a good win. We win 30-13. It was a smooth sailing game. Had it in control the entire time. And you sailed to a victory. Now you get to get ready for Week 5 against the Arizona Cardinals, which is going to be an interesting game. And we'll talk about that next week. So, this has been Week 4, post-game 49ers. I've been your host, Ben Retz. I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thank you for all the support. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. All the links to our social medias are down below in the descriptions. We love talking to you guys. We appreciate the support. And we can't wait to just keep doing this thing with you guys. So, peace.